Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Extinction Event by Jonathan Yañez. Narrated by Rachel Leblang. 1. I don't know how a drug could be responsible for affecting him like this. He just started taking Vanadrum last week. Mrs. Jones trembled at the sound of another loud bang as she searched Taylor's eyes for answers. He's in the study. I can go in alone if you would like. No, the woman whispered. He's my husband. Taylor nodded. Mrs. Jones slowly opened the door to the upstairs office, and the two women entered. The first thing Taylor noticed was the temperature in the room. Both windows in the upstairs office were open. A high-powered ceiling fan rotated in violent circles, adding to the chill. The only light came from a single lamp in a far corner, warping the office in varying shades of shadows. Taylor took in the leather furniture, mahogany bookcases, and Persian rug in a quick second. Her attention was soon directed to the figure on the opposite side of the room. The man was hunched over a large desk, opening and closing drawers in a frantic state. One by one, the drawers were flung open. Mr. Jones would rummage through the contents for a few seconds, then, unsatisfied with his findings, he would slam the drawer shut in a show of frustration. Taylor stood still a moment longer. A checklist was going off in her mind. 5'8", subject in his 50s, no obvious weapons. Mr. Jones, Taylor said, taking a step forward. Her boots sunk into the soft rug as if it was trying to suck her into the floor. James Jones refused to acknowledge anyone else was in the room. Drops of sweat fell off his face and onto the desk as he continued to search in a frenzy. Taylor moved forward until she was only feet from the maniacal man. Excuse me, Mr. Jones? No response. Chin directed down, Taylor was left to guess at his expression. Liquid oozed from his face and sprinkled onto the desk below. My name is Taylor Hart. I'm here because your wife is worried about you. Mr. Jones, can you hear me? A whisper. Taylor leaned in closer to hear the raspy mumbling from the man's throat. So much of what he said was indiscernible, but what Taylor did catch made no sense. Got to find it. Almost there. Almost beautiful. Then I can share. I can make them beautiful, too. Mr. Jones, what are you trying to find? What is it you want to share? Aha! Mr. Jones screamed. Cloaked by the lack of light in the room, he held up a sharp object in his right hand. Eureka! Mrs. Jones gasped. With something that could be used as a weapon now in her subject's hand, Taylor placed her worn notebook on the desk between herself and James Jones. Shoulders squared. Hands ready. Knees slightly bent. Years of training took over. If Mr. Jones noticed the shift in Taylor's stance, he didn't give any indication. Instead, he retreated to the large open windows behind him. His left hand reached toward his lower back. He pulled out a mirror that lay secured between his waistline and belt. Leaning half his body out the window to catch the moonlight, Taylor got her first real look at him. Mr. Jones indeed cared about his outward appearance. Hair plugs rustled in the breeze of the open window. Unnaturally white teeth contrasted against bronze-colored spray-tanned skin, reminding Taylor of a cooked potato. However, it was his face that made the air catch in her mouth. Mr. Jones' face was a bloody mess of scratches and holes. Lumps of flesh fell from his cheeks, chin, and nose. It was blood, not sweat, that dripped from a dozen different points. James Jones lifted the mirror in his left hand and caught the moonlight. The reflection that would horrify most made him smile.
"Beautiful,"
he murmured to himself. Along with illuminating the man's face and mirror, the moon cast light on what he held in his right hand. The pointed object he was so determined to find in the desk was a letter opener. The blade was no more than a few inches in length, but Taylor knew from experience that even the smallest knife could be capable of horrific actions. Taylor gave herself the briefest moment to be shocked, and, just like that, it was gone. Taylor gathered herself and moved around the desk, closer to the bloody maniac. "Mr. Jones, I don't know what you think is happening, but you're hurting yourself. Your wife and I are very worried about you. Please, give me the knife. We can all sit down and talk about whatever it is that's bothering you." Once again, Mr. Jones ignored her. His eyes never left the reflection of himself in the mirror. A sick smile twisted his lips upward. He stood there without moving, enraptured by his own image.
"James! James!" Mrs. Jones shrieked. "You must stop this! What are you doing?"
Taylor lifted an arm to warn Mrs. Jones away. The distraught woman pushed it off and walked closer to her husband.
"James, this isn't you. This is the medication talking. Please, come away from the window and put down the knife."
Before anyone could move to stop him, James Jones lifted the letter opener to his face, digging the blade into his forehead. With a quick right-to-left flip of his wrist, he opened a long, shallow cut. Taylor grabbed Mrs. Jones by the arm and pulled her back as she screamed.
"There,"
James breathed.
"Perfection."
For the first time, he looked at the two women in the study.
"Oh, hello. Would you like to be beautiful, too?"
Taylor held on to the trembling Mrs. Jones. A quick look at her face confirmed what she was thinking. The woman was in shock. Taylor pushed the quaking woman behind her, refusing to let her own fear rule the moment. She turned to confront the psychotic masochist. Taylor was done playing nice. The situation needed to be resolved quickly or someone else was bound to be injured. "Put the knife down, now, while you still have an option."
"But why? Why wouldn't you want to be perfect?"
Mr. Jones asked. He threw the mirror on the desk, shattering the glass in a dozen different pieces. Blade in his right hand, he advanced.
"You'll see. Once I bleed the imperfection from your face, you'll see the truth. You'll be beautiful. Beautiful like me. You do want to be beautiful, don't you?"
Taylor knew she couldn't let the man's blood come anywhere close to her. Whatever was making him act like this could be contagious. Left foot forward, right foot back. Taylor waited for the attack. Mr. Jones smiled as he stalked toward her. A gleam in his eye told Taylor all she needed to know. He had to be put down, and he had to be put down hard. Knife raised in his right fist, blood oozing down his face in sheets. He smiled at her. Taylor didn't hold back. The moment he was in range, she struck with her right foot, lifting her boot off the floor and swinging up in a wide arc. A split second later, her foot slammed into James' left temple with enough force to topple a man twice his size. Without a sound, he crumpled to the floor. Taylor took a long breath. Adrenaline was coursing through her body. With no outlet to expend itself, the adrenaline forced her heart rate to increase in tempo. She moved toward the downed man. Motionless, he held on to the letter opener. Taylor kicked the weapon out of his hand and knelt on the floor next to him. Unwilling to come in direct contact with his blood, she listened for his breath rather than checking his pulse. Mr. Jones was lying face first on the carpet. Blood pooled from his self-inflicted wounds, soaking into the soft rug. Taylor leaned toward him and listened. Beyond her own heartbeat and the steady beat of the fan, she could hear the shallow breathing of her assailant. Satisfied he was alive, Taylor rose to her feet. She turned her back to the unconscious man and reached for the cell phone in her pocket. Mrs. Jones stood near the door to the study, her mouth open but unmoving, her eyes glued to the still form of her husband. "Mrs. Jones, you're in shock. I need you to go downstairs and wait for my medical team to arrive. Can you do that for me?" Words beyond her, the woman managed to raise a finger and point behind Taylor. Instantly, Taylor knew what the woman was trying to communicate. "He's standing up behind me, isn't he?" Mrs. Jones nodded. "You need to go downstairs, now." At this point, Taylor wasn't sure if the woman could manage another nod, let alone a word. Taylor turned, cell phone in hand. He was already standing, breathing heavy. New, bright red blood mixed with older brownish stains all over his face and clothes, creating a tie-dye of red and brown shades. "What's wrong?" he whispered. "Don't you want to be beautiful? You should release that wonderful, dark beauty within you. It wants to get out." How did he get up from that? Taylor wondered. He should have been out for hours. Without warning, James lunged at her again. This time, there was no room for a wide kick. Taylor had to improvise, coiling her right leg in front of her and slammed it as hard as she could into the charging man's chest. Falling backward, James caught the base of his skull on the desk. A loud crack split the air, and once again he crumpled motionless to the floor. This time, Taylor wouldn't leave anything to chance. Tucking the unused cell phone into her jacket pocket, she crossed the room to the corner lampstand and yanked the electric cord from both socket and lamp. Braving the now dark room to secure her attacker's hands, she knelt down beside him and began working on tying his wrists together. Grabbing his forearms and nudging his hands behind him with her boots, Taylor avoided making direct skin-to-skin contact with any section of his blood. She liked her face exactly how it was. Taylor was satisfied with her job. Even if James Jones somehow regained consciousness in the next few minutes, he would be unable to pose a threat. Taylor reached for her phone and dialed her operator's number. "There you are," the familiar voice said. "Here I am," Taylor agreed, keeping a watchful eye on James Jones' unmoving body. "Report?" Taylor glanced back at Mrs. Jones for a brief second and chose her words. "We'll need a medical team and a containment unit." "Really? How bad is it?" Taylor caught motion out of the corner of her eye. Against all odds, James Jones was stirring again. With a grunt of disbelief, she walked over to his struggling form and placed a boot on the center of his arching back. "Taylor? Taylor, are you there? How bad is the situation?" "Bad." 2. The speed in which the support crew arrived told Taylor they were already prepped for the incident. More than likely, they were already on their way prior to her call. In a matter of minutes, 3 black SUVs pulled into the Joneses' driveway. No lights or sirens heralded their visit. Tinted windows hid the car's occupants until they exited the vehicles. Taylor watched them approach from the second-story window. She instructed Mrs. Jones to greet them at the door while she remained upstairs. Against all reason, James Jones continued to struggle against his bonds, flopping on the floor like a fish out of water. Despite the blood loss and multiple concussions at Taylor's hands, he refused to lie still. He persisted in his incoherent mumbling while Taylor pinned him to the floor. Her right boot secured his lower back to the study's carpet. "Why?" he said, clearly enough for her to hear. "Why wouldn't you want my gift of freedom? The darkness that lives inside us all is begging to be released." "Thanks for offering the impromptu plastic surgery, though I'll have to pass. I like my face arranged how it is." Her comment didn't faze her prisoner, who continued to ramble on about beauty and darkness. Seconds after the SUVs arrived, car doors slammed and an army of medics, investigators, and even a psychiatrist, all on the company's payroll, entered the house. They really pulled out all the stops for this one, Taylor thought. Footsteps on the stairwell preceded the office door opening, and a familiar face poked through. Despite his youthful appearance, Wade Treadstone was a senior member of Lazarus Pharmaceuticals. He handled public relations for the company and headed her own department. Outside of tonight, Taylor had only seen him a handful of times at the office, never outside of Lazarus Pharmaceutical buildings.
"Taylor,"
he said with a wide smile. Men and women in black suits and sterilized medical uniforms entered the room behind him. "Mr. Treadstone, I wasn't aware you handled cases in the field."
"Please, call me Wade."
He motioned to James Jones' struggling form on the floor beneath Taylor's boot.
"Reliable as always. Did he put up much of a fight?"
"Nothing I couldn't handle." Wade's team wasted no time in containing the situation. Lights were found and flipped, 2 large men in suits relieved Taylor's vigil on her prisoner, and a medical team began their examination on the secured subject.
"You're sure no bodily fluids came in contact with you?"
"No. I anticipated that may be an issue, so I handled him at a distance." "What exactly are we dealing with here?" Wade scratched the stubble on his jaw. His eyes traveled from his team working in the study to Taylor.
"You know as much as I do. You've handled these calls in the past. The medical team will let us know exactly what it is. Probably an overdose or a cocktail of the wrong medications."
Taylor bit her tongue. In the last 2 years she had worked for Lazarus Pharmaceuticals, nothing like this had ever happened. In the years she spent working for big corporations and government agencies, nothing like this ever even came close. Sure, there were always drugged-up maniacs. Overdosing on pills messed with people's minds. But this was somehow different. Darker.
"We'll need a full report, as soon as possible," Wade said. "Taylor, I trust I don't have to remind you that our company values discretion above all else."
Something in his tone threw warning flags in Taylor's mind. Everything was off about the night so far. The edge in Wade's voice only confirmed her suspicions. "Of course, sir. That's why you pay me so well." Wade smiled, as Taylor knew he would. People in position of power always enjoyed the mention of money. Their religion told them if someone could be bought, they could be trusted.
"Good. I knew you were the right person for the job,"
Wade stated.
"Despite the late hour, however, I'd like you to get checked out by our medical team tonight, to be on the safe side."
"Of course." Taylor's eyes shifted to the rest of Wade's team. 3 men were holding James Jones in a chair. He was secured now with handcuffs and a mask that brought to mind images of Hannibal Lecter. A 4th member of the team injected what Taylor assumed was a sedative into his right arm. 2 more men stood nearby, ready to jump in if their captive's constant struggling became too much. The idea of 6 large employees all restraining a single man past his prime was almost comical. Almost. James Jones was beyond words now, gnashing his teeth. The repetitive motion of his enamel striking each other made a disturbing clicking sound. He struggled with every ounce of his strength to rise from the chair.
"Perfect," Wade said, motioning Taylor out of the room. "There's a car waiting for you downstairs that will take you to the office."
Taylor raised an eyebrow.
"I'm afraid I'll have to insist," Wade said with a smile. "I'll have someone drive your car to the medical wing.
Once you're cleared, it will be waiting for you. Despite the minimal interaction with Wade Treadstone in the past, Taylor knew his type. Arguing the point would get her nowhere. That's fine, she said without missing a beat. I'll just need to grab my notebook. 3. Lazarus Pharmaceuticals was the largest and most respected distributor of prescription medication in the world. Specializing in the newest cutting-edge drugs, their main office was located in Los Angeles, California. The office was only 30 minutes from the Jones household. Her driver wasn't the talkative type. That was fine with Taylor. She had enough on her mind without the empty banter most company chauffeurs insisted on. She sat in the cushioned black leather seat with her notebook opened on her lap. She worked best when she could write down her thoughts. Ever since she was a child, Taylor kept a pen and paper close. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't know what to put down. Sure, there were the normal housekeeping items like time, location, names, but the facts were already written. What she needed now were words for what she'd witnessed. Calling James Jones crazy or drugged didn't do the event justice. She filled the gap of time her brain needed to process the correct words by writing down and circling the drug's title. Vanadrum. It was impossible to pen what she felt. She needed more time to process. Taylor's hand hovered over the page for a second, then she wrote down one more word and closed her notebook. Darkness. The company's headquarters were located on a square mile of land. Multiple gates and guard checkpoints stopped her driver as they approached the medical research wing. Each time, they were waved through with minimal delay. Soon, the black SUV pulled to a stop at a side entrance. Taylor exited the vehicle and headed inside. As she walked to the front door, she noticed the driver didn't pull away until he was sure she entered the building.
Well, hello there,
a friendly female technician in a long white lab coat said.
You must be Taylor. We were called and told to be waiting for you.
Taylor stifled a yawn. Yep, that's me.
Great,
the woman said with a large smile uncommon for the late hour.
If you'd be so kind as to follow me, we'll get you checked out as fast as we can and have you on your way.
Sounds good. Taylor followed her down a white, tiled hall, lit by bright fluorescent lights. Even at this hour, the medical wing was as busy as ever. A corporation as large as Lazarus Pharmaceuticals operated around the clock. Soon, the lab technician ushered Taylor into a large room equipped with every kind of medical device she could imagine. And more she couldn't. The scent of hydrogen peroxide was thick in the air. Taylor wrinkled her nose on instinct as the fumes caught her by surprise.
Oh, and I've been so rude. My name is Jean. Please, take a seat,
the lab tech said, motioning to a large padded table covered in thin tissue paper. Taylor complied without hesitation. The lab tech started her examination.
This will be quick, and we'll get you on your way. Mr. Treadstone ordered a full panel as fast as possible. With the technology at our disposal, it won't take long. If you can remove your jacket, we'll start with a blood sample.
Taylor shrugged off the brown leather jacket that felt like a second skin to her and extended her right arm. Jean was efficient at her job. In a matter of minutes, she had removed 2 vials of blood, swabbed Taylor's mouth with a cotton tip, and called an attendant to pick up the samples.
Great,
Jean said, with another smile.
I'll need to take a look at your eyes, ears, and throat. Once that is done, we'll see the results of your test, and you'll be good to go. How are you feeling?
Taylor shrugged and stifled yet another yawn. Besides tired, I feel fine. Given Jean's youthfulness and cheerful disposition, Taylor decided to push the conversation toward events of that night. There was no way the young lab tech could know what happened. Still, she might be able to shed some light on the situation. You said Mr. Treadstone ordered a full panel of tests as soon as possible?
He sure did.
Jean said, peering through a silver hand tool and into Taylor's left ear. Is that normal for someone like me? I've never had to do this.
Jean jotted notes on an open folder. What do you mean by someone like you?
Taylor raised her eyebrows. Apparently, Jean knew less than even Taylor. Wise on Wade Treadstone's part, not letting his right hand know what the left was doing. Taylor didn't skip a beat. I mean, a normal, everyday employee like me.
No, I guess not.
Jean stopped briefly to think before going back to work. Using a similar instrument, she flashed a light in Taylor's eyes and leaned in to examine her pupils. What tests were ordered with my blood and saliva?
Pretty much everything,
Jean responded, sticking a wooden depressor against Taylor's tongue and flashing another light down her throat.
Oh, I get it. Nerves kicking in, right? Don't worry, I'm sure you're fine. There's nothing to be concerned about. You're as healthy as anyone I've seen. You must work out. What's your secret? Yoga? Pilates?
I get so nervous about these things, Taylor lied. Thanks for the compliment. I try to get as much exercise in as I can.
So far, everything looks great. If you'll wait here for a minute, I'll go check on those blood and saliva reports.
Taylor nodded and was soon left alone to replay the night's events in her head. She had handled dozens of similar cases. In every instance a large corporation had something to hide, they were willing to pay people by the truckload to brush their messes under the rug. Taylor had no problem admitting to herself what she did for a living. She was paid to clean up messes prior to them making their way to the authorities, or worse, the tabloids. She was personally responsible for keeping the pin in more than a few hand grenades that would have torn large companies to pieces. For her current employer, she handled situations ranging from overdoses to faulty medication. Taylor estimated she saved Lazarus Pharmaceuticals millions of dollars in lawsuits and recalls over the years, not to mention keeping their spotless track record intact. Despite all of this, for some reason, tonight bothered her. Maybe it was the look of pure madness in James Jones' eyes. Perhaps it was the way he wouldn't stay down after numerous blows that would have sent men twice his size into a coma. Vanadrum. Taylor whispered out loud. Vanadrum was what he had started taking when the madness began. That was the connection. It was more than coincidence. Vanadrum was Lazarus Pharmaceuticals' largest success in history. People were waiting in line at their doctor's offices to be prescribed the mood-altering drug. Dots began to connect in Taylor's mind. A light knocking on the door interrupted her. She looked up to see a smiling Jean holding her blood work.
I told you it would be fast. As promised, a clean bill of health. Mr. Treadstone said you were free to go and wanted me to remind you that a full report is due first thing in the morning.
4. Boop, boop, boop. Is that my alarm or an air raid? Taylor thought to herself. For all that is holy, what I wouldn't give for another 5 minutes. She reached out with her left arm in a blind, flailing motion, swiping her arm through the air in a wild, half-conscious attempt to stop the incessant noise. She got lucky on her third try and hit the snooze button. Her joy at the silence didn't last long. Responsibility and the events of the previous night brought her out of bed. Faint memories of a nightmare encroached the edges of her consciousness. The more she tried to remember it, the further it faded into oblivion. The events from her dreams and the incident from the night most recently past were so closely related she was having trouble telling one from the other. Taylor soon disregarded her current train of thought for a shower. The shower's steaming water did its best to fight the weariness from her bones and comfort her troubled mind. While it helped, nothing would solve the dilemma of needing more sleep or chase away the images from the previous night. Her choice of clothing was similar as every other day. Boots, jeans, plain tee, and her brown leather jacket. Hair falling in every...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?